Welcome to What's My Thesis. I'm Javier Proenza, and today my guest is Misael Soto. And as you might have noticed, we are in base Abuelita Alpha of What's My Thesis. We're in Miami right now, and we're going to get to know some Miami artists, which is, people forget that I'm from here, and this is where I learned about art. And I'm still a Jen Stark fan. I'm still a Burt Rodriguez fan, and all of those people that were like really big. I guess it's 20 fucking years ago now.
Yeah, I don't even know. I think that's multiple generations for counting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's my generation. I don't know. How old are you? Do you mind me asking?
I just turned 38.
38. Okay, so estamos cerca.
Yeah.
Where was your high school?
I grew up in Broward.
Oh, okay. Cooper City?
Close. My high school was in Oakland Park. I was actually all the way in the west in Tamarack. In between like Coral Springs and Sunrise, Sawgrass
Smalls, I know.
And then I moved to Miami in my early 20s.
Okay. How do you like it?
I mean, I got the 305 tattoo. So
okay. Well, one of the things that that I'm excited about coming to Miami for is that like LA has such a distorted view of what Miami is like, you know, and I think they see a lot of news on like MSNBC where they see a lot of the people that we don't vibe with
right
protesting, and then they forget that like this is a swing state because of Miami, you know, and Broward, you know, any densely populated area, right? So I think the big thing is that because Cubans are Republicans, it's like they assume that everyone's homophobic out here, but like my impression growing up was that this is one of the gayest places I've ever been. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Is that an accurate?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get the homophobic, macho Cuban men, but they somehow always like if you get enough Coronas in them, they forget, and then they're your best friend.
Yeah,
and so it's definitely it's very different, right? We always say we're not in the South. We're in Miami. We're not part of Florida. This is Miami. This is something else.
Yeah, no, it's like un experimento.
Oh, a total experiment.
Like they just let all the Caribbean people move. You know, they messed up all of our countries, and then all the Haitians and the Cubans left. And then, I mean, not Cuba. Cuba also was responsible for some of that too.
Right.
Fidel, pero yeah. Because people don't in LA are like, yeah. Communist revolution. I'm like, that wasn't a communist revolution. That turned communist when they needed it. You know? So anyway, so tell us a little bit about your background, your art practice, and all of that.
Sure. So I'm from Puerto Rico. I was born there, and then we quickly moved to Broward, Fort Lauderdale area. My dad is Puerto Rican, and my mom is Cuban.
Who's the 6-footer in your family? Because
I think it came from both sides. They're both about there.
Okay.
My mom's side is like British, French, super colonial Cubans that left as soon as the shit hit the fan. And then my dad is completely different. Guajiro, mountains, half black, very like didn't see the ocean until he was 18.
Wow.
And he grew up in Puerto Rico. But that's how poor he was. That's how far he was from that reality. And they somehow met in Puerto Rico because my mom's family moved there after the revolution. And so culturally, I'm very Puerto Rican. That's
really?
Where I went in the summer. That was like what we listened to, what we ate. My dad was the chef. So
how different are the? I'm gonna try to fight because not everybody speaks Spanish, but I'm here.
No importa, que aprendan.
So how does the cuisine differ? Just real quick, because it's a lot of pork too, no?
It's similar, I would say. Arroz con gandules versus arroz con frijoles, like separate. Like la bandeja, like full of everything. A lot of sancocho.
Okay, this is I
don't know.
Mofongo, I do know.
Tostones versus like maduros.
Maduros, yeah. Maduros out here are amazing though. I miss that shit every time.
I learned to appreciate them. Yeah.
Well, cool. So then, your art origin. When did you realize that you were into making art and all that? Because Miami's an interesting place for that, and the scene is very much. It gets hyped up internationally in a weird way, but then I don't really think people know the scene. You know, they come for Basel, but
Yep.
they don't know like who's on a day-to-day basis grinding it out, you know. I don't even think like I mentioned Fred Snitzer and Emerson Dorsch outside of Miami in LA, and people are not familiar, but to me those are like the huge institutions that I grew up around, right? And do you know Jessica Gispert?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
Dear.
yeah, she's what's it called? Well, that's the other thing. The scene is so small that like everybody knows everybody.
We all know each other.
Yeah, exactly. Like in LA, I still meet people that I don't know. But so yeah, tell me about what got you into making art. What because you said you're performance based, and then how do you identify your practice now?
Sure. So it's kind of one of those things like where to begin, right? But I would probably today start with an art history background. That was my bachelor's. I went to FAU in Boca.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly started working at a couple galleries, including the Art and Culture Center of Hollywood. Art and Culture Center of Hollywood at the time was curated by Jane Hart, who would only almost exclusively curate Miami artists.
Oh, nice.
So I started meeting everyone.
Yeah.
I was doing graphic design. I was doing art handling. I was doing the front desk there. And just through meeting folks, I really started realizing, it's not that hard. It's not that special. But also that like it's all about finding your niche, finding the thing that works for you. I went through a kind of personal upheaval where I was just in a mood of saying yes to things. It was about 23. And that same year, I went to go see Marina Abramovich's show at MoMA. And I sat with her. I waited all day, didn't get to see her. Came back the next day. I knew how to like skirt the line. And I sat with her, and I'm very critical of her and her practice. But I also teach history, and I obviously teach her work, the early stuff. And that experience in itself was transformative. I came back the next weekend. I parked my car right in front of one of the locations of Locust Projects and Dimensions Variable, two kind of art run alternative spaces. At the time it was the design district.
Okay.
Just before,
which is insane.
LVMH bought everything.
I went to Art Miami there, and that was like, I've never not been able to park in that area.
No,
I was like all cocky. It's like the spot to be now. And then same thing with Wynwood. It's just so different.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, sorry,
they
I'm
blew up.
distracting.
No. But that's where someone like me, 23, wanting to be a part of a scene, wanting to be an artist, but wanting to do it in my own way. I wanted to do it in public. I had these kind of performative, interactive works that I started when I first kind of started, and that's where I went, because that's where art happens. Or at least that's what I understood it to be. And so I parked my car, and I did these what are called sunset joy rides, and I would just invite people around sunset to come in my car with the windows down and enjoy a ride that I kind of like. I did a little circuit where you could always see the sun the entire time. And that was my first work, and it was just about sharing, about bringing people into an intimate space. A lot of things that are actually still grounding my practice. And then after that, it just kind of took off. I just did a lot of things where, that they tell you to do. I would apply for open calls. I would show up to openings. I'd be at every party, as Andy Warhol would suggest you to do. And
it's pretty doable in Miami.
Yeah, you can get into, especially as time goes on, things get more difficult to the access becomes a little tighter, but especially in the early years of, Art Basel, Wynwood, all of that, you could very easily be in the room with those now art stars, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that was what, like, the accessibility of people. It just seemed like it was there. And I wasn't like necessarily in the best like mindset at the time to sort of really take advantage of that. But it was really impressive the way that like it's just a community of people, and then they also happen to be really successful people. Like Burt Rodriguez was really accessible, like all of those people.
Yeah.
But so then, What you've done stuff with? I shout out to Jacqueline Falcone, who's the one that hooked us up.
Yeah.
You've done the interventions with her. So
Mm.
a lot of the stuff that you guys have been active in is pretty much all the stuff that I missed out on, which I'm interested in your thoughts on how the scene, because you just said it's gotten a little bit more restricted and more inaccessible.
In a way, I mean, I think there's always been, and to speak to your point before about how folks don't know the Miami art scene,
Yeah.
when they're not from here, that's by design. You
Mm.
know, that's something. My work now has a lot to do with the history, the infrastructure, and the systems that kind of pervade a given context, let's say. And so I'm very aware of how Miami has always been built for the flyby huckster, the carpetbagger, the Ponzi scheme, etc. It's Miami. Florida is built for that, and Miami as the capital of Florida is made for that. Has always been made for that. So that's why folks don't see the art scene when they come here for Art Basel.
Yeah.
It's on purpose. And that separation has just grown over time because that's what power does. It consolidates itself, right? So, you know, it's very easy to have like nostalgia for the heyday, but you also, when you do look back, you realize that it's always been this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You also had rose-colored glasses, free vodka colored glasses.
Oh, that's right. So people don't know, like at Wynwood art openings, what it used to be is that they would have like sponsorships with like Bombay Sapphire, and you would just go and get crazy blasted for free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know how that business model worked, but it was pretty good from the consumer standpoint, you know.
It's wild. I mean, I Tito's and a couple of others still do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it works, but at that time, you're right. It was bonkers.
Crazy. And it was like you know, I mean, now that Wynwood is all gentrified, it's different, right? It looks like a little South Beach when you drive past it, right? You know, like
plus Williamsburg.
Yeah, but I've never been to Williamsburg, so I can't make that reference, but that makes sense. But yeah, it's a strange cultural moment that I think that it makes sense that it's not there anymore, but it also kind of speaks to that like cycle of like, you know, you make an art comes in because it's cheap to live there. Because I remember I used to work at Fred Snitzer's, and I remember standing on the corner and this car just kept casing me. And we always had cars casing the spot, you know, and we had to like go out there and be like, hey, what's up, man? You know, like dudes just in cars smoking cigarettes. One time I had to go to like the chop shop because this car kept circling around because I was at work a little early, and I was like, I'm not comfortable, you know? Yeah. So I know one of the ladies from Emerson Dorsch would drive her car to Frederick Snitzer because it was that like not safe.
Oh wow.
You know, and they were like, you know, walking distance, really short walking distance.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. It like, I mean, in those days, I don't know if it's still the case, but it just felt like it almost felt like we were doing something illegal, you know, like it was block party. Like, you know, it was like, because we're in that neighborhood, we can just have liquor, you know.
I mean, I worked for Dorsch.
Oh, really?
A little bit into the buildup of Wynwood, but we were still like doing some, you know, interesting things. We were, you know, begging for forgiveness instead of asking for permission.
And that was like on the second Saturday. Is that still a thing?
No,
it's because they don't.
What's funny though, now Allapattah has a first Saturday thing that they just started.
And Allapattah was like, stay out of Allapattah back in the day. That's where you used to go to like the metal shows.
Yeah, or like a really seedy rave.
Yeah.
Sometimes you still do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then, so then, can you give us a little lay of the landscape? Do you feel comfortable doing that? So we've got spaces like Dimensions Variable, which I like really a lot. Layden was saying that their focus is mostly on abstraction. So they're not, they are specifically, their programming stays maybe, I don't know if I'm misspeaking and saying it intentionally stays away from representational work, but it is interesting, and it is nice to have a space that just dedicates itself, regardless of what's trendy,
Mm-hmm.
in the broader market. Then there's Locust Projects. I'm not too familiar with their programming anymore. There's the Boss Fisher Invitational.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like the staples from when I was around. I just met Luna from Tunnel because Jessica just had a show there.
Yeah.
But then like what are the hierarchies here? Are there any huge, like, are there Gagosians and Zwerners down here? No, it's still the highest point is still going to be like a mid to high level gallery, right?
Yeah.
Not quite a mega gallery.
Yeah, it's gonna be Snitzer.
Yeah, Snitzer's at the top of the game.
Spinello, Dorsch, Emerson Dorsch.
Yeah.
Um,
And for LA people, that's probably going to be in the realm of a night gallery, Francois Guibali. Although I don't know numbers wise because I don't know the market here that well, but that tier of gallery is sort of where we kind of top out here, which is and then there's a lot of collections like the Rubels and whatnot.
Yeah.
What spaces are popping now? Like, because I mean, these are institutions at this point, even though they're artist run nonprofits.
Yeah. I'm glad you know about and have brought up Tunnel. Of course, it's because of Jessica in this case, but they are a very exciting space. I have been a couple times, and it feels
it's sincere. It's
a bit nostalgic.
It's in a parking garage.
Yeah,
it's very cool. I really enjoyed it.
And there's studios around, and they're kind of like they're also like curating a display on another side of the building.
And it's also kind of impossible to find unless you know where it is. So that makes it a little bit more hip and stuff.
If you know, you know.
But then you end up running into other people that, hey, this person looks like they might know. This guy has the cut of an art person.
Yeah, in that part of Little Havana, you stand out.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd say beyond them or besides them, who I'm maybe most excited about these days is Name Publications.
Okay.
One half of them is Natalia Zulaga, who's been a friend for a minute now, and the other is Gene Moreno. Gene Moreno, I don't know if you know, but he's been around. I mean, they both have, but Gene especially. Gene was showing with a lot of the artists that we already brought up from that generation, and currently works at the ICA with the research department. They have been doing shows almost, I'd say about it's like a 20-80% split between non-locals and locals. So pretty locally focused. They're a publishing house first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
So almost every show has like a good catalog or a good kind of piece that comes with it. And it's tough to explain, but I'd say their focus or their kind of mission is very much about they're always object makers, but they're object makers that kind of like have their own thing going. Like they almost feel timeless in a way. A lot of the artists kind of feel like they could have been working in any of the last like 4 decades.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just know I'm going to go there. I'm going to meet someone who wants to talk about art. Like it's not schmoozing. It's like real.
Yeah,
and that's so hard to find, right? Tunnel has a similar kind of effect.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of thing trickles down. And it isn't always around, isn't always the case, right? Beyond them, I try to stay away from the large spaces.
Like what do you consider large spaces?
Like the Perez Art Museum.
So the
ICA.
The collections. Is it ICA collection too? Or is it more of a museum?
It's supposed to be a museum.
Are we gonna get me in trouble already on my first Miami interview with locals? You can talk shit. I don't mind.
I mean, they were birthed out of a rift in the board at Mocha North Miami.
Oh, okay. Right. So it's already fraught with gossip.
If you want to do your research and start there and just follow the money. The biggest board members that I see are the Brahmins.
Okay.
Who kind of run this town in some ways.
Oh, wow.
Car magnets. They have the biggest car dealership in town.
Oh wow.
Big
Okay.
Marco Rubio donors.
Oh, okay. I see what we're
Yeah,
dealing
yeah,
with.
yeah, yeah. So, but I'll probably be at the ICA on Friday to see a reggaeton show that they're having for Pride. I don't know. Like, it's tough to like not go to anything because it is small. Miami is
Yeah.
small, and I think this speaks to something bigger, which I'm curious as a Miamian if you feel similar. I feel like Miami makes you more tolerant. It
About what?
you can hold space for good and bad
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
bit more because you're not as siloed as in a lot of these other cultural capitals, right?
Yeah. Like I don't hate on Brito when I see him in the airport kind of thing.
Burrito's a G.
No, that's what I'm saying.
He's a G. I don't care what any of you. I don't. It doesn't even matter the art. It's what the art does.
Yeah.
Wow.
No. I mean, but he's kind of Miami's sort of Thomas Kincaid. You know what I mean? Like the punchline of Miami. But no, I got mad respect for homie. I mean, he's got a store in the mall. Like
2 in Lincoln Road, 1 on either end.
Yeah. No, he has one in the also in the airport too, which is crazy, you know. So I mean, I know that like in art school you're taught about like I think that art school is very much taught from the perspective of people that are not pursuing a career at higher levels, right? So then it becomes a thing where you keep training the next generation of teachers. And almost like this market for teachers right now is overflooded, so everybody's struggling and it just stuck being adjuncts, which is kind of like an interesting thing. But yeah, like the I don't know, it just becomes an interesting way of existing. I'm sorry, I lost my place.
No. I mean,
I was hoping I would remember.
But basically, what I was saying is that like the Miami being so small, you have a higher tolerance, and so you do end up in the room, so to speak, and sometimes literally with folks that you don't necessarily want to be in the room with, or that you just kind of either tolerate or try to understand or talk to or etc. And I'm not, there's a fake side to that, but I try to approach it in a real way, and I think a lot of folks here do too, right?
Yeah.
Or they have their homophobic cousin, or they. It's just like it kind of does something different. Whereas like when someone says, "Oh, I know Miami," right? Because they've seen it on TV or because they came here for spring break. And I'm like, actually, yeah, that's an important side of Miami.
Yeah.
And then here's this other side and this other side and this other side.
Yeah.
And I think our art scene makes space for that as well. The more you're here, the more you realize that you do have, I'm trying to tie it back. You do have a space like ICA or the Perez that is now covered in rainbows and showing the hotter ticket artists and throws a party every week, is a rental space. All of that shows a lot of stuff that their board collects. But then you also have spaces like Tunnel and Name on the other end of things. Locust Projects is doing amazing work. They just moved into a new space.
I can't believe how long some of these spaces have been around, especially artist run spaces like that. Like that is commitment, but they must be doing some like nonprofit status or something like that to keep at some point you have to make it like financially not a burden.
Yeah. And it's hard.
Yeah,
I mean,
really
I
hard.
talked to Lori, who's the director at Locust right now, a lot, and they struggle.
Yeah.
But if you're not struggling, it's probably, it tells you something. If you're struggling, it tells you that you're onto something. I think Locust Projects actually, to be perfectly honest, lost its way a little bit when they were in the design district. They got really big. They were showing Theaster Gates and Daniel Arsham and all these big artists, amazing shows. Caliber was top notch, but it strayed from their original mission in a way that left a hole in our scene that is now being filled by them again, which is really interesting.
So they're coming back to the roots. Nice.
They came back to their roots.
Yeah.
And the show there now is by Carrie Phillips, amazing Miami artist. And it's like given her a huge space and a capacity that she rarely has. So
That reminds me of that. Do you remember that period where WVUM, who, for those of you who don't know, that's my University of Miami radio station, when WVUM started playing for some random reason, just like Billboard Top 40 for a while, and everybody just got so mad, and then they just went back to like the because
that's so funny. I forgot about that.
But do you remember that
I do vaguely.
Like
I just
a period.
wasn't
so
listening
brief.
to it.
Yeah. It was so brief, and everyone was like, "What?" But like, yeah, and that's funny because it's that station is such a life, or at least growing up here was such a lifeblood. Like one of the things that I always try to explain to people about Miami is that it is part of the general continuous United States, but it's also an island. Like
totally.
Because you got to go through 8 hours of Florida and then 8 hours of the South to even get to like, non-Southern. And like you said, we're not the South, this is not South. This is South Florida, but it's like,
no, we're the capital of Latin America.
Yeah, for sure. And for better or worse, that's where a lot of like migrate, a lot of people whose countries aren't doing so well because of our sanctions end up over here. And those people tend to sometimes be a little bit more right wing than is maybe palatable for people in Los Angeles, but that doesn't make them less human.
Yeah. Or the other side of it was like they can be disaffected. They don't feel like they can't vote.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera.
No, and there's a bunch of like there's a program over here to make doctors from Latin American countries into nurses, and like that must be a very hard pill to swallow, to be a doctor in your country and then you come over here and and there's something of an exploitative element there because they're having these doctors, some of them do become doctors and then they can't make the same as a regular doctor, so it's there's a lot of like people think of it as like a party town. There's a lot of immigrant hardship here, like a lot.
Definitely.
So
yeah, I meet folks all the time, especially older generations at art events, and when they talk about the careers, the galleries, the amount of work that they were making back in Buenos Aires or back in Bogota or wherever, like it really humbles you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and aquí somos los reyes, like Latinos run this town, which is such a, which is so ironic because you have all these anti-racist, quote unquote, in more progressive parts of the country that resent the shit out of this place. But this is like the only place that I've ever been here that's not American, that's like its own thing, its own identity. And that's what really informs the art scene too. You're Puerto Rican, so you don't necessarily have the same thing, but growing up in Miami and being a Miami artist, I was very frustrated with, like, especially at the time. I doubt that it's that much of a thing, but the Cuban art of el exilio being very popular here and sort of feeling like you have to somewhat exist in relation to that. Right? Like you're either rejecting it or you're not, which I find is something that other people of other racial backgrounds also get frustrated with, right? Do you have, I mean, you're not Cuban, so I don't know. I know that is there like a Puerto Rican version of that, or is the Puerto Rican story less dramatic? Because Cubans are very much like,
yeah,
la patria.
Yeah. I mean, my grandma wore the Cuban chain and everything, and would talk shit about Fidel every day.
Yes.
So I get that, but I definitely don't think because there wasn't such a kind of dramatic, violent rift that Puerto Ricans, at least to my knowledge, have a similar kind of call to say, or to kind of like stake their artistic space in that way. But I definitely feel it here. I think it's gotten less and less.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel
in the scene here. Yeah.
I think as that generation gets older and dies out, like especially my grandmother's generation, that kind of sentiment is gone, because then what's left are people that are like my mom's age who were refugees and did come over, but they were like, still pretty young, so they spent enough time here that they didn't lose a whole lifetime's worth of things. You don't have to comment on that.
No,
You're
no,
welcome
no.
to. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I do have some more questions.
Tell me. Yeah.
So your art practice. Let's now that we've gotten some cultural context from which you're coming out of. Because I understand it being from here, but most people don't necessarily know what this scene is like.
Yeah.
So you've done interventions, or what's it called? Jacqueline said that you did some interventions at her
Breakfast.
at Bed and Breakfast LA. Who like they have some new programming, so I want to plug that.
Yeah.
Much love to Jacqueline. She's always been a very supportive and good Instagram friend, because we don't really kick it, but every time there's like business to talk, she's like down to talk business.
Amazing.
So what inspires you to do stuff? We got the car trip, which I like.
Yeah.
And especially because that's such a Miami thing, because to me that comes from, you probably spent a lot of the time hanging out with your friends in cars.
Yes.
And
driving a lot. I mean, especially at the time I was still living in Broward. So.
Yeah. And when you're living with your parents, the only place you have privacy is your car.
Well, and as soon as you turn 16 or 18 or what have you, like you get a car.
Yeah,
like my household, like many, unfortunately, had a car for each person. Like, because you can't, especially living in the suburbs, you can't. It was a Nissan Sentra.
That's not bad.
SCR.
Okay, that's not bad.
I was a Fast and Furious. Kid.
I mean, it's Miami. Although I've noticed it's all Chargers now. All Chargers and Challengers. The culture's gone.
The rice burners are gone.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad.
I haven't seen a single Japanese car. Yeah. I saw one Supra and then one FRS, one BRZ.
Yeah. Or if you see them, they're just stock.
Yeah.
You don't have the souped up. You don't have the slammed.
I mean, I know people that I know one dude that has a Viper. I know. I mean, I'm not in contact with him anymore. But we grew up together. He has a Viper. My other homie has a GTR that's souped up to and runs on ethanol. Just to give you guys an idea of what subcultures exist in Miami.
Yeah. But it was just like back in the day. It was like you didn't have to have a lot of money.
No.
You just had a hand-me-down Civic. And you put like rims and lights on it and whatever. So anyway, it is very much, that first piece is very much tied to my reality. And I am definitely have always been interested in context and site specificity, interaction, participation. And those things have just kind of evolved as time has gone on, as you realize the politics of what you're doing, as you realize the reasons behind what you've always been doing, which is just an interrogative practice, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what being an artist is. It's about, kind of looking at what you've done and being in constant dialogue with yourself. So as that's gone on, I've, kind of become more and more outwardly political. And I'd say a major shift occurred when I went to grad school.
Where'd you go?
I went to SAIC in Chicago for an MFA in the performance department. Mm-hmm. They're one of the few schools who have a performance department. And it's funny because at that time I wasn't necessarily doing outright performance. I'd say on one end was me doing kind of participatory, systems-based interventions that were very pre-planned, and it would almost look like an exhibition. Mm-hmm. And on the other end would be, feminist using a grinder to cause sparks to come out of her vagina. Mm-hmm. And that was the beauty of that department at SAIC. It really made space for everyone in the middle, in the gray and over to the sides and everything. And I would say that was in 2016. Mm-hmm. And so when Trump got elected, it really shifted everyone's discourse. And you're in the right place. It was kind of a weird silver lining, let's say. And it really pushed me to just be more, as I said, outwardly political. And so the work as it looks today is oftentimes temporary in public space, dealing with infrastructure. I like to think that infrastructure, something as simple as a sidewalk or a road, can tell you a lot about our priorities, our those in power, and so I interrogate these things through a kind of communally based practice where we kind of do things together. The last project I did was called Bridge Deconstruction, so it was about bridges. It was based, let's say, at the Wilsonian, which is a fantastic museum here in Miami. It's located in South Beach. And over the course of a year, I did a kind of 3-phase project where I taught a class with graduate history students. We kind of developed a base of knowledge. It was locally based, but it was also about just kind of everything. And I allowed the students to kind of focus in the ways that they wanted. The summer of last year of 2023 was the public input phase. So trying to kind of mimic a public works project. And so that involved a tour that with Bass Fisher Invitational.
Nice.
A bus tour that took people on different kind of connecting sites, different bridges in town, and a town hall that brought people into the process. Really just, it was a kind of open call session. And from that, some local artists joined the project. And then the third phase was the bridge deconstruction site at the museum, which took over a bridge tender house that is part of their collection. And that had an exhibition inside of it. We kind of made it look like a working bridge tender house. So there's some kind of like parafiction involved in
What's
that.
a tender house? Sorry.
A tender house is where the bridge tender, the person who tends the bridge, kind of is stationed.
All right.
They're usually... So this is like a very beautiful Art Deco one that became a part of their collection in the 90s. And from there, we also did programming. We did performances, lectures, different activations over the course of the 3-month exhibition. And now I'm working on a publication to kind of honor all the work that we did together.
Nice.
So it's really thinking about, these things as that are kind of mundane or banal, similar to driving in a car, right? What poetics can we get out of these things? How can we use these banal, everyday things that we think we know, they're ubiquitous, they're boring? How can we make them a connector, a placemaker, something exciting again, something that tells us something new about that thing, so that when you see it in the future, when you're stopped, right? Florida has all these bridges that have to stop for boats. Yeah. When you're stopped at a bridge to let a boat through, you look at the bridge and you have more of a knowledge of an understanding about that thing, but you're also thinking about it in a different way than you would have, 2 months ago or whatever. So that's really what my practice is invested in now.
So when you say it became more political, you're not talking about like electoral politics or anything on that, or even anything as like exilio politics.
No.
Oh my!
Stay away from that.
You're so lucky. You're only half Cuban. The burdens.
So true. I wonder.
The anxiety, dude. No, it's you're dealing with a whole generation of people that are like dealing with constant trauma,
Yeah.
and like, and the craziest thing about it all to me is just how little empathy people have for this experience, And here in Miami, everybody kind of gets it, right? Because a lot of people were affected by it, but like outwardly, like everyone's like, "What's the problem?" I was like, dude."
But I think that's something that we don't talk about enough in the art world, and I think it has a lot to do with the binaries that are pushed within American politics and with American markets.
Yeah.
Like if you're saying something about your experience as a Cuban, as a Puerto Rican, you have to see it. It has to be marketable. It has to be branded as such. Otherwise, how are you going to tell me? And that's why, like, you brought up Dimensions Variable. I was an artist there for 2 years. This is a conversation that I had regularly with Layden in particular, because, he would struggle, in a good way, with whether or not to be representational, where like how too literal, because his pieces are dealing with real things, but they're abstracted.
Or
they're used in an abstracted He would love this space, actually. I'm realizing.
I've invited him, but I don't think he remembers me. Like one of the things
might walk out with something like this chair is perfect.
No. I mean, I met him. We've hit it off. He liked me. We had, you know, he invited me to stuff and stuff like that. It's just been so long. I think out of sight, out of mind, kind of thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I want to, I don't take it personally. Out here, nobody knows this project. Nobody knows anything about this, which is kind of nice because it gives me some level of anonymity. Not that I go out and people like recognize me immediately, but if I'm in certain art spaces, people like, you know, people relate to me a little bit differently because I have a platform that I can that I can give people access to, right? Over here, nobody knows anything about me. Nobody knows who my most famous, like, I doubt anybody knows who John Plipchuk out here or Tita Whitney, all the artists that are like hot in LA. No one out here knows because there's its own,
it's a different scene.
There's its own thing happening here, but which is interesting. So anyway, I attributed it to that. I don't take it personally, like, you know, but if you, I mean, I'm happy to be introduced to people. I mean, that's kind of how
I would love to.
Yeah.
I would love to. I mean, I'm definitely active. I you know, beyond my practice, to speak to this. I've also been organizing artists here in Miami for about a year and a half.
Organizing in what context?
We can't have a union in Florida, but we're trying to make union moves. We're definitely collectivizing. If you know Tanya Vahan,
no,
in LA, she did the LA artist census there.
Oh yeah.
And we're working
Tatiana.
Sorry,
Yeah.
What did I say? Anyway, Tatiana, yes, or Tati. So we're working with her to do a version of the census here in Miami that will be cross-referenceable with their census.
Okay.
So that's one of our projects. We called ourselves Artists for Artists, Miami, or A for A for short. And we've also been kind of helping artists organize in response to fundraisers that feed off of us unequitably.
Yeah.
Or currently we just declared a boycott on an organization.
I know. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that. Do you feel comfortable talking?
Totally.
I mean, you're posting on it. So.
Yeah. No, there's some of our members are anonymous, but I'm definitely not.
Yeah.
This is a response to a censorship that occurred. Say what you will about the contents of the art, which referred to the current conflict in the Middle East, specifically with a kind of diffused call for or a kind of, let's say, abstracted representation of the phrase "from the river to the sea," which was on view in a Walgreens mural, a Walgreens window. So the Oolite is one of two organizations that curate Walgreens windows on Miami Beach. They've done it since the 90s, as far as I know. So this piece was up for a month. Someone asked the organization to take it down. And so, again, say what you will about the contents. The way it was censored was very abrupt and unilateral. They did not ask. They only told the artist it was happening. This was one board member, the board chair. As they did it all ways wrong that could have gone wrong. They did with just no respect for artist integrity. And so we quickly put together a letter, not only by the artist, but by us as a community. It now has over 700 signatures, calling them out and calling for various demands, such as the resignation of the board chair and a restructuring of the organization, things like that. And we've been given the runaround. It's over a month now since this happened, and they haven't been listening and really kind of giving us almost less than nothing, right? Like the statements they've given us feel like a slap in the face. And it's because Miami historically has never stood up for itself. Miami artists have generally taken a lot, have been very disorganized, and we're trying to stop this. We're trying to make this not the case. So we're calling for a boycott of any programming, any kind of usage of their affiliation. Basically, we're asking artists to kind of foreclose Ulight's access to your cultural capital.
Yeah.
Right? Because, and we put specifically, still take their money, still use their spaces if you have a studio.
Yeah, yeah.
It's because, well, first of all, because we as a generation of artists should have access to that, because Ulight's particularly interesting because it used to be Art Center South Florida. Art Center
that's the one that used to be in Homestead?
On Lincoln Road.
Okay, all right.
So Art Center South Florida had two spaces. One historically was this beautiful corner space right on Meridian and Lincoln Road. Used to, up until they sold the building, you could, see artists working in their studios, very like open, and it built up built up capital. These artists really were a part of Lincoln Road's renaissance.
And for people that are not from Miami, Lincoln Road is essentially an open air street that's been blocked off, has like a bunch of coffee shops, different stores. It can lean a little bit touristy, but it's not t-shirt shops. It's a little bit more higher end than that. And what are the famous spots? There's some famous stuff there. Like there's decent restaurants and whatnot.
I mean, it's been changing quite a bit.
What is To the Extreme still there? Vanilla Ice's store?
No. I wish.
It used to be there.
I wish. There's an H&M now and a Nike, and
Vanilla Ice is from Miami for people that don't know. But yeah. So it's like an open air mall.
Yeah.
But it is a cultural center, and there are a lot of these things. Like I remember Jessica and Crystal Pearl when they were collaborating did an event that I recently saw a picture of at Art Miami of me in a wig, pretending to be un cubanazo.
Whoa!
So we did, like there's cool stuff. Yeah, we did a performance in like the top floor of a window of just being as Cuban as possible.
I love that.
Like gentuza, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Jessica Gisbert's early work, but it's a lot of it references this cultural thing of like it's like Cuban trash as opposed to white trash, like chongas, which not is different than cholas.
Yes, very different.
Just because it sounds, but in the 90s it was a lot of lip liners and scrunchies.
Oh yeah,
yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Earrings with your name on it.
Yeah.
Which is very still the case. But yeah, Lincoln Road has gone through a lot of eras. I mean, it was founded in the 20s with the beginning of Miami Beach, and this current wealth that exists on that street is tied directly to artists.
For sure,
who are a part of Art Center in particular. But there were a lot of other artists on Lincoln Road as well. Fast forward to what I believe was something like 2015, something like that. They sold the building. They made nearly $100 million.
Wow.
At the time, the board was very little artists on it, and that is still the case.
Yeah.
And when you are controlling wealth made by a generation of artists, and you're not doing right by us, we are calling bullshit.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
And we ultimately want more say in how that wealth is controlled. They've done a lot for the community. Just to be clear, they give out over $500,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
They are of organizations of its kind that are about artist access and studio space and giving grants, they are by far the most endowed organization of its kind in the country. I think the closest next to it has a budget of something like 5 million.
Wow.
So you see the huge difference. But that said, there are many ways to give grants. There are many ways to give artists access and space. And over the years since the sale of that building, it's kind of been proven that they don't know what they're doing, to be fair. And this is kind of the last straw. So it's not coming out of nowhere, is my point. And so, we say that this censorship happened in a way that isn't centering artists, isn't true to their mission.
Yeah.
So we're holding them to account.
Yeah. And for people that are not familiar with Miami, it is also, there are a considerable amount of openly Zionist people here, which I'm not saying anything negative about anybody. I'm just acknowledging that they exist here because we're on YouTube. We humanize everybody. Zionists are humans too.
Yeah.
I don't agree with them, but they are human beings.
Yeah. And I think it's important to know where we're at.
Yeah.
And again, that's why it's like you didn't have to agree with the statement that was put out there, but there are ways to engage and talk with an artist.
Yeah. Well, it's from my understanding of it, having basically just seen a little bit of it online through your posts specifically, it does seem like it's an upper management kind of PMC move that doesn't really respect where the labor is, right? In like, it's the cultural capital thing, like. We add, it's the same thing as like a developer setting up an art gallery in a building that they want to be cool.
Yep.
Yep. It's you see that everywhere. It's universal, whether in Miami or LA.
And that's why developers and lawyers
are in the board.
Are on the board.
Yeah. There you go. There you have it. So LA. It happens in Miami too.
It happens probably more here. I don't know, but
one of the things that I do think, with my understanding of Miami scene, is that kind of a boycott over here is probably more effective because the scene is more interlinked and stuff like that. So,
I think you might be right.
Yeah.
I definitely think it's our response is tempered to where we are.
Yeah.
And actually, to tie it back to my practice, I mean, this organizing is very near and dear to my heart and very linked to the way I move and operate as an artist as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's very site specific. It is about reading systems, reading the room.
Yeah.
Trying to understand what is called for in this time and place. And not, I'm definitely, I did research for a month in Norway on unions.
Yeah.
But I didn't come back here and say, we're going to start a union. I said, let's meet, let's talk and see, what do we need?
Yeah.
And that's why we ended up wanting to do a census.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think more of that and being less prescriptive. Like, this is what I tell my students. I'm like, where are you? Like, what do you need?
Yeah.
What does your community need? Respond to that. Because I think for so long, the art world has been either reactive or prescriptive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's painting a broad brush, but I don't know. That's why I try to do what I do. Yeah.
No, that's fascinating, and it's really interesting, and it makes me feel like I got to toe back into the scene just knowing about like what's going on. It is an interesting art world. How do you feel like you in particular, because this sounds like this board are in that ivory tower of the people that benefit from a thing like Basel, right? Because obviously Basel is a thing, but Basel's good for business. Basel's good for everything in South Beach, right? Like that. There's you can't get anywhere.
And I'm personally not struggling that month and the month that follows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of work. There's a lot of money flowing through the city.
Yep.
during that time period, especially in the art economy. And people like these board members probably stand to benefit from it, right? Like, it doesn't escape me that one of the best places to launder money is
yeah,
and these people are involved in it, so that's interesting. Can we talk a little bit more specifically about how you feel like the general scene, and I know you can't speak for everybody, but like what is the sentiment of like Locus and Dimensions Variable and all those places? What is their feeling, and what is the general scene's feeling of Basel when it comes? Obviously, it's a good thing, right? You just mentioned that you're not going to be struggling financially because there's work. I also remember that, like Basel comes to town, you've got art handling work, everybody's excited. You quit your job for a week.
Yeah,
you call
you're
in
good
sick
until February.
Yeah, you call in sick so that you can actually make money instead of keeping your regular job, right? So what are the things that are exciting, and then maybe what are the things that are frustrating about that? Because it is almost impossible to separate yourself from it when you're an artist in this scene. But I haven't been I keep coming back for Basel. I don't go to the convention center. That's exhausting. Yeah. That is just so much. It's just like one of the worst places to consume art. You'll see some of the most amazing stuff, like you'll see. Like, I remember back at the time I was really into Gursky. I would see huge Gurskys, but there wasn't room for me to see them because there was like next to it, there was some other genius that was like crowding it, right? It's like going to a car show, but even car shows aren't that, cars get more space at car shows than the art at Art Basel.
Sometimes you can drive them.
Yeah.
So, there's that.
But yeah, can you talk a little bit about how you, what the scene's broader relationship is to it?
Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of experience with Art Basel as my entry point in many ways into the scene here in Miami. I have had a lot of experience as a art handler, something I attempt to do less and less every year. Some years I succeed.
You're getting up there in years, man.
Sometimes I don't. It hurts.
You catch it. I'm 44, so man, yeah. I know I don't want to art handle. All that manual labor is ruthless.
It just gets dangerous after a while as well. I mean, there was a good from like 27 to 30 when I was working for Marion Goodman, and I would do Basel, Switzerland, all the Basels, Hong Kong, Miami.
You would travel. Wow.
Freeze, etc. So I've seen the ugliest side of the most, one of the most prestigious galleries in the world.
Yeah.
And we've already talked about how it affects kind of Miami. Miami is meant to like expand and contract during these things, right? That's why there's not just Art Basel here. There's all these other shows and things that happen
there's
here.
There's Untitled Art Fair.
And beyond the art fairs, right? Like we have like a boat show, and then we have like a ultra music festival. And it's just our city's built to
for the wintertime.
expand.
There's the Winter Music Conference, which is like that's actually a little bit later, right? That's in March?
Typically in February. It's like now 2 weekends in a row.
Yeah.
So it's really like just 2 weeks of nonstop partying, which we already have, but
that is also, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is also another thing. Like, it's not like Miami's nature is that people come here when it's nice.
Yeah.
And most of the time people don't come here during July, June and all of that. No. Like, I'm here in the off season. Now.
I mean, summer just kicked in hard.
I know, but you see that pool out there? That's where I'm headed after this.
Yes.
I was like, it's either sweat in LA with no AC or AC out here, and then hop in the pool. I'm like, man,
that's good. When you live here, you want to know someone with a boat or a pool.
Yeah. The boat life is so nice. I hadn't been here in 15 years. The last time I came, I think it was like 2022, and I was fantasizing about the blue ocean, and that color, because like I mean I went on a date with a woman who took me to Malibu, and I was just like, this isn't that nice.
Yeah.
I was like such a sour puss.
Malibu's gorgeous, but it's not the same.
It's just ugly by comparison. It's just gorgeous out here. But anyway, sorry. I keep distracting us.
No, it was a great digression. I think so I can speak. I'll first speak to like more of like my personal experience, which is I think every year I treat the art fair a little differently, right? I think it's important to kind of like see how it can work for you. There's been years where I've had an opportunity, and had a large public installation on Miami Beach, or things like that. More often than not, to be honest, are more you tend to get lost in the noise of the week. So it's important to like make sure to bring the right people who are in town and all that stuff and play that game. At this point, beyond paying off debt, if that's what happens, like doing a little art handling or what have you, I'm really just taking advantage of the fact that really good people are in town.
Yeah.
That's for me, that's been the biggest benefit of that week. Seeing old professors and old friends from different parts of the world, reaching out to artists or folks that I think are accessible, and meeting with them, having a coffee, etc., seeing what they're doing. And then seeing some cool pop-ups or things is always an advantage. I think still I see it happen every year. Artists and local institutions, they get caught up in the excitement. They think that this is going to be, the amnesia is real, and I'm guilty of it, or I have been guilty of it. And you think this is the year that everyone's going to be talking about your work, or that you're going to break through, or like I don't know what it is. And I never see it happen. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because Art Basel's not for us.
Yeah.
As we've said. And that's why the art fair, the actual fair in the convention center feels so disgusting or off, or not the way you're supposed to experience art, because it isn't.
Yeah.
It's not meant for you. It's meant for...
It's a trade fair.
Yeah, it's a trade fair, and it's for money laundering, and it's for folks who fly in and fly out the next day.
And the stuff that gets the most press is the stuff that makes people most angry, right? Like the banana, you know, like it's almost like it's like such an insider thing that like the only way people and it's opulent, right? Like it's like it really is like Miami. I think people think of it as being very wealthy, and dude, the houses are not cheap.
There's so much wealth in this city.
There's a lot of wealth, but the wealth really comes in. I mean, when's stone crab season?
I think it just ended, or maybe we have a couple weeks left.
But it's like it's usually during that Basel time.
Oh yeah. I think it starts in November. Yeah. So it's just starting.
So like all the ritzy stuff kind of starts to pick up. So there's a place called Joe's Stone Crab that is like an institution. And if you haven't been there, you're kind of missing out, kind of thing. Like you're not an insider.
Yeah, I mean, try to go there if you're ever in town. I always say try to go there once.
Yeah,
like the inside feels like you're like on like the Titanic or something.
Yeah. No, it's a restaurant that's closed most of the year.
Yeah,
like dude, that's crazy.
People who work there, like they make six figures. Bartending. Yeah. It's insane.
People are
crazy.
People are feeling expensive that day, you know, when they go there. But yeah, well, cool, man. I mean, we've basically done an hour. I don't want to pull any teeth, but I've had a lovely time. I really appreciate your perspective. I definitely want to see some art with you while I'm in town if you're around. I know you're like leaving.
I'm here for another week.
So if anything happens, definitely hit me up. I'd love to do that, and I definitely want to keep in touch because I'm planning on coming back to Miami pretty regularly. But where can people find you? What can we promote for you? Do you have anything coming up? Any stuff? Or actually, hold on. Before that, Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you wanted to talk about? Like, am I missing anything? Because I'm not always the best interviewer, and I can't always get that question for that thing that you want to say. If you don't, it's fine. I just want to give you the opportunity.
I appreciate that. I think, you know, we talked about what's most top of mind, which was my current organizing with artists, and we got into my art practice a little bit. I think it was pretty well rounded. I feel pretty good.
Cool. And then now, can we promote stuff for you?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of my work as the Department of Reflection, which I didn't get into, which is totally fine. It's my parafictional municipal department that I invented when I was working with the city of Miami Beach.
Okay.
I still work as the department to this day because it provides a kind of diffused authorship and
like
framing for communal action that I really thrive on. There's a website and a Instagram for that. I also have my own personal website, my own personal Instagram, misael soto. I'm pretty easy to find. There's not too many of me on the internet.
And the Instagram for the department is
Department of Reflection.
At Department of Reflection.
Yes.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, man. I'm like, I know it's gonna take some time to like get more guests out here because I'm pretty much an unknown in a scene that. Like, I understand, having been from here, I understand why people are like not immediately like, oh yeah, you know. I
had to drive through horrible traffic to get here from the beach. So also that,
yeah.
I don't know, it's so hot. But
you know,
I'm gonna get you at least one killer.
All right, I appreciate that.
Artist in this scene.
Well, I think also once this comes out, people will see that I'm doing the, you know, so it's not
get the word out.
Yeah, it's more like proof of concept hasn't been established kind of here, you know.
That's real.
Yeah, and I totally respect that, you know, like I'm not from here anymore. So why should I expect people to bend over backwards for me like I'm someone important? No. I would totally respect that. Anyway, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for Jacqueline Falcone to introduce us. Yes. And, I definitely got much love for her, and what's coming with Bed and Breakfast is exciting. For you guys that don't know, Bed and Breakfast is basically what it sounds like. You sleep over at an art, installation in an apartment, and then she prepares food for you and stuff. They read you bedtime stories, I think, at one point. So, I mean, I don't know what the next iteration is going to be like.
So it's going to be at a park.
It's at a park.
At a public park.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you guys really are close friends.
Yeah.
And then you got access to information she hasn't put publicly out yet.
Yeah, don't tell her I told you.
And then okay, thank you guys for watching. If you like, please like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at What Is My Thesis, and rate us 5 stars wherever you listen. And we'll be back next week with another guest and another topic that may not be art related.